Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to listen to this video. I just kind of wanted to start this first series here with a quick intro on the intro to the United States party systems through the course of our history. So, you know, for a good start off, like what is a party system? Well, a party system is like just generally speaking like a concept in political science on how people organize into political systems and parties in a given country in order to achieve their goals. Basically, two sets of coalitions that form in the case of the United States in order to achieve, a common shared goal or goals. That's kind of how I would define it. So, as an example, in the case of our first party system, which existed from the late 1780s with the formation of the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and then eventually Federalists to Democratic Republicans, basically a kind of central, those who believed in central government authority, a kind of industrialized vision of America with, additional levels of state level support versus those, like in the case of the Democratic Republicans, led by Thomas Jefferson, who was the first president who was a Democratic Republican, kind of more of the belief that federal power should be more decentralized, more power to the states, the ideal kind of embodiment of the American, society should be the yeoman farmer, a kind of agricultural version of America that wasn't beholden to cities, manufacturing, that sort of kind of argument that was being made by members of the Federalist Party, key leaders including Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, John Adams, and the like. And basically, our party systems, they change over time as new problems evolve. So in the case of our third party system, for example, right after the end of the Civil War, you have the rise of railroads and rapid industrialization of the United States. And basically, the previous party system that had been, geared up, in the case of the third party system, that evolves on basically like, how do we solve the issues generated by the outcome of the Civil War? How do we deal with Reconstruction? How do we deal with trying to, readmit Southern states and reincorporate them into the polity of the United States? The core issues that affected Americans changed, and because of them, the political parties had to change. And then, you kind of have in 1896 the ushering of the fourth party system that led to kind of, the progressive moment in the United States. General beliefs that like the government could intervene in kind of a technocratic manner to resolve some of the deep inequities that have formed from monopolization, both, with regards to, kind of industry as well as with the railroads. That the government had the responsibility, or at least the right, to work and bust those monopolies in order to create fairer, more competitive markets that helped the average American. Similarly, at the end of the fourth party system, we had a whole new set of problems in the country. We had the Great Depression, and the existing framework of the two parties, the Republicans and the Democrats of the progressive age, they were not equipped to solve those problems and to handle that debate. So you have a whole new creation of a set of ideas that leads to the formations of, brand new ideologies. And in my next video, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the difference between political party system realignment and sorting, because there's a difference with the two. Sorting, generally that occurs within political party systems all the time. Different groups of people, like right now, we're seeing rural voters move to Republicans, suburban voters move to Democrats. That's sorting. That's not necessarily indicative of a political realignment. But it's an important part of a realignment, and I want to kind of talk about some of these issues. So we can kind of just like quickly see, like, if this is our first party system with Republican support. Um, these following images pulled from Wikipedia, so anyone can view them. Democratic Republican support very strong in the South. You know, the Federalists after the first two presidencies of or first two terms, I should say, of George Washington, who had basically universal approval throughout the country in his first two elections. We see in the election of 1796, some of the lines get drawn a little bit more clearly, and especially by like the election of 1800 and onward to really until the Hartford Convention of 1815 and the 1816 election, that really the Federalists were a northern type of party. Like I said, favoring industrialization, manufacturing of the country is kind of the future, versus the southern states tended to be more Democratic Republican, favoring more agricultural bases of an agricultural base for the economy. As we progress through time, we have the second party system between the Democrats, or first the Democratic Republicans, then the Democrats, I believe, starting in 1824. Between them and the Whigs, similar types of arguments being made with regards to kind of delegation, low-level involvement from the federal government versus having, federal programs to support infrastructure improvements and, to use the federal government to promote that. Third party system, we see the rise of, the populists, William Jennings Bryan, who, ushers in the start of the fourth party system. And, looking at these maps now, we would never associate it with, what a Democratic versus Republican map should look like. The entire Northeast and most of the West is, pretty solidly Republican during this time frame, with Democratic support being concentrated in the South. Really, Woodrow Wilson likely would not have been able to win his first term had Taft and Roosevelt not split the Republican vote. It was that was just the nature of the party system during that time. And here is like just a let me go here to the fifth party system map, like same type of idea. On Wikipedia, you'll often see there's two maps in this period. So there's a fifth party system here and a sixth party system. I'll make an argument that there really is no sixth party system, which I believe Wikipedia has starting at 1968, and they do offer that disclaimer on whether or not there's an actual party system, or for that matter, whether we're in like a seventh or an eighth party system that's formed since the election of Reagan and then Trump. But I'm going to argue that there's just five party systems, and that's because we're still having the same debate, right? More or less with regards to the role of the government in the economy. We're still having a debate around like the New Deal, welfare, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Some of those, granted, our politicians tend not to talk about them a ton because those tend to be third rail issues, but they're still like kind of like the defining cleavages between the two parties, I would say. This sixth party map more is just a reflection, I would say, of the political sorting that occurred with the Republican Revolution in '94, basically blowing the Democrats out of their traditional base of support in the South, and making the South generally, and the Midwest, or at least the kind of upper western part of the Midwest, solidly Republican, and then meanwhile the two coasts pretty solidly Democratic, with the Rust Belt states and the Northeast tending to be pretty regular voters of the Democratic Party, with maybe the exception of New Hampshire. Kind of starting from the second later part of the 20th century to the present day. But we kind of see this again from Wikipedia, just kind of like a map of our 5 different party systems as they go to today, with the Federalists evolving kind of into the Whigs, and then eventually from the Whigs into the Republican Party, and then Democratic Republicans evolving into the Democratic Party. Nothing is really so kind of clear cut as this. You have different political coalitions moving from party to party, not really as cleanly as this would imply, but it gives you a nice solid summary of how it really looks like. So, I'm gonna, I think, leave this video at this. I'm gonna go into, for a second video, talking a little bit more about the difference between a party system realignment, a political realignment, and sorting, because the distinction between the two is important. And like lastly, I would just like to say, like, grabbing the sources, pictures here, it's coming largely from like Wikipedia. My thoughts on this are kind of like an amalgamation of sources, but one source, just between like reading news articles, reading academic articles, reading Wikipedia for that matter, solid source for all of us trying to get some general information. But I also want to like highlight a solid book I've read recently called The Next Realignment, Why America's Parties Are Crumbling and What Happens Next, by Frank J. DeStefano. I don't have, again, this is like not really doing this this channel for like sponsorship, so not sponsored by any of the sources I mentioned, but it's a really good book. Really enjoyed reading it, and while I don't necessarily agree with all of like the points of the book, I do think he makes a good case for why there are currently 5 party systems, and why we need to, why we're not really talking about moving from like a 6th to a 7th party system. We're talking about moving from the era of FDR to moving to, potentially a new political party system that can incorporate the ideas of and the real debates of today, that have changed so much even in the past 20 years, past decade. So, again, thank you guys for taking the time. I'll upload the next video pretty soon. But yeah, thank you guys really for taking the time. It's much appreciated. And again, let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to talk about in particular, and I'll make a video for it. Have a good one, and stay safe out there and healthy. Bye.